Hi, everybody. Welcome to the next episode here, the next chapter in schools. I'm your host, Peter Young, sponsored as always by Corvessa Partners. Very fortunate to have with us today Dr. Cinde Locke, head of school at the Pickering College, just north there of Toronto, Canada. Dr. Locke, welcome to the episode. As always, would love to turn it over to you. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Let us know what you want us to know about yourself, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. Well, it's a pleasure to be on the show, Peter, and thank you for inviting me. Yeah, so I'm head of school at K-12 day and boarding school, Pickering College, just north of Toronto. Do you often do interviews with people in Canada? I was kind of watching some of your shows and seeing we're in the US.
It's a good question. Yeah, I've had conversations with school leaders, a couple in the Vancouver area, one or two others in the Toronto area, head of school at one of the Jewish schools there in the Toronto area. So, but yes, I can't remember off the top of my head if we've recorded any episodes with Canadian-based school leaders, but definitely have had conversations.
Very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the things we're very focused on is, thinking about what the future of school should be and walking towards that. So, I'm interested to hear what you've learned from other educators that are doing the same kind of thing. And, are we all starting to coalesce on that same future vision, or are we breaking into pieces? And do we have to worry about, having all these alternative schools all over the place that don't really reshape what we need to be doing, which is mainstream school?
Sure. Yeah. Well, let's start with that. Let's start with sort of the mainstream school at Pickering. Describe for us, if you will, programmatically, somebody hops on that elevator. Give us the 30-second, 45-second elevator pitch for Pickering College, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So we're really looking at amplifying the human connection and the human experience at school. So yes, an experiential program, but more so one that's really focused on impact and helping kids get connected with the real world in real world partnerships where their learning becomes real. And helping them be involved in these meaningful projects and activities that they can then see that they can be change agents, that they can actually have an impact on their world, and that they can do something that's meaningful in their life. So I guess I'd say one of the differences of us with other schools in general is that we try to do that within the core curricular program, in addition to service learning and all of the co-curriculars, but really looking at a student's experience in each class and saying, how do we change what you experience in that class rather than the teach, test, teach paradigm?
Yeah, no, fantastic. So I appreciate and really like this phrase, amplifying human connection. If I'm not mistaken, you all are a Quaker-based school. Can you talk just a little bit more about maybe how does that weave into this idea of amplifying human connection? You mentioned the word impact. Yeah, I think that would be interesting for the audience.
Yeah, we're the only Quaker founded school in Canada, which is really kind of cool. But we're not a religious school at all. So it's not following, any kind of doctrine from a religious perspective. It's more about values and it's about beliefs, right? And they're kind of universal, like looking at, finding the light in others, celebrating that, helping each person feel that they're a part of something bigger than themselves. And, all of the values, community, integrity, equality, stewardship, all of those pieces kind of fit into that whole frame of the school experience. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. You mentioned at the outset sort of this idea of, what have I been hearing from other school leaders? What are they thinking moving ahead? I want to go backwards before we go forwards. Obviously, COVID was huge in 2020, 2021. So I'd be interested to know from your perspective, maybe over the last 5-7 years, where have you noticed education shifting, either for the better or for worse, if you will? How has Pickering adapted? What is Pickering maybe doing now that they didn't do 5-7 years ago? So, you can zoom in all the way to sort of the day-to-day at Pickering, or in general, more of a macro view, if you will, over the last 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, so I think that schools pivoted really well during COVID, and they went online and they made the best of it. They also realized what was lacking in the online experience, because I think a lot of people were frightened that all schools would just become online and just use, tech-based approaches. But the thing is, like, kids have also come back and realized that, it was kind of soul destroying if you couldn't connect with other people in a meaningful way. But they came back and then were more than ever, I think in the last 5-7 years, they've been more anxious and more disengaged in school than they have beforehand. And I think that's, like when you look at all the books, the stories, the dialogue from educators, I think that's a common piece. And tech has advanced a lot in the last 5 years as well. AI tutors can now come in and be right there for the student with unlimited patience, unlimited time, and unlimited resources to, interact with the child. So the role of the teacher is the piece that really is changing, because the teacher is no longer like, it's a joke to think of the teacher as a sage on the stage, right? And they're the ones that hold all the information. No, they don't. I mean, you can get information pretty easily. You can get kind of a partner online with critical thinking even, but what you can't get is a feeling of belonging and a feeling like you're doing something meaningful, and a feeling of confidence and participation in something that's meaningful. You can't get that online. So really, we're trying to focus on all of those pieces. What can never give us? How do we make sure that the school does that really, really well? And then how do we do that in a way that helps students feel that their lives are meaningful, that they can have a meaningful life going forward, and that they can do something which has a sense of purpose and, inner passion with it, and that they feel, connected within a community, and a feeling of belonging while they're doing it. I think that's so important, and a lot of schools have been doing that. I think that's where school needs to go.
Right. You asked again earlier about sort of my other conversations. I will share with you, and then we can move forward with this. But I will share with you that I think a lot of the school leaders, it's a mixed bag in terms of the approach to AI. You mentioned AI. I think from an information perspective, everybody to a person would agree with you that from a content perspective or just information gathering perspective, it can happen within seconds. And the teacher and or the adult in the classroom doesn't hold that information in the way that they used to. I think where school leaders differ widely is the adaptation and or adoption of AI at the school level, right? So you described a little bit in terms of Pickering. Can you describe maybe a little bit more detail where meaningfully you've seen change in terms of AI in the classroom at Pickering, where maybe are people pushing back for better or for worse? Again, I don't think there's no right or wrong answer here, but I think, again, from an audience perspective, they'd be interested to hear how are you all thinking about those topics? Because again, it has been varied across school leaders, more so in terms of the policy conversation, less yes, we know we can get information at a moment's notice.
Yeah, so I think that we can look at AI in different ways. We can look at it where it is right now, and how everyone was shocked when ChatGPT became mainstream all of a sudden overnight. And then everybody's scrambling to get, policies and resources in response to what does it mean in terms of a student cheating or whatever. But that's kind of like just looking at today and being stuck in the model of today. I've been focusing on, and what I think that a lot of school leaders are really thinking about is, what does that look like for what we can do tomorrow that we could never do today, right? And that's more systems level thinking with the use of AI. So we're building a platform called the Landscape of Learning, and working with a company and an amazing set of people that are creating this for us. But I know other companies are doing this as well. And this is, I think, where things will start to coalesce together, because we're able to make learning much more personalized and individualized, and tracking students in a different way for their learning than we were ever able to do before. And this is the glory of AI and what we can do with that. So I think this is the piece that is the most exciting. For instance, say that you think about school today, right? So I'm in grade 10 science class, and we just learned a unit on whatever, unit X. Well, everybody has to write the same test at the same time, in the same timed way, on the same material. And then you grade the test, and everybody here are your grades, and then you put the grades in the system. That's treating students in a pack, because that's the only way we know how to do it, right? Because that's how our systems work. But they don't need to be like that anymore. Now we can say, okay, here, Peter, you've got your curricular expectations for science and math and English and social studies and whatever, and grade by grade by grade, you've got your whole platform that shows you and your whole learning journey. And now we can say, okay, did you meet this curricular expectation? And in what way did you meet it? Where's the evidence that you met that? Did you exceed it and go beyond it because it was interesting to you and you got a minor in that? Did you exceed it and apply it in a meaningful context and you got a major in that? You can pick where your majors and your minors are. Did you work with somebody in the community on that? And they can type in a testimonial to show their work with you. Did you work with a mentor or an expert? Did you do this in a test? Did you do it in a project? Whatever, you can put that all in. And now you're mapping all your curricular expectations one by one and seeing where you are in that learning journey. Now it doesn't matter that I wrote the same test as you did on the same day. Who cares? What did I learn within that and how I'm tracking that? It could be in a test. It could be in any other platform.
Sure.
I've just popped you out of the whole cycle of how we think about your journey through school. I've taken you off that that kind of conveyor belt of school, and I've created a different conveyor belt that's specific to you. And this is what we're focusing on. And AI, of course, can then say, oh, the school offers me this menu of projects that are available with community partners. And I can pick from that which one is of interest to me and what I want to do. And I can also have my platform guide me by saying, I see that you still need these 3 expectations in this science unit or whatever. Have you thought about this project? Because this would help you get these 3. So that's where the AI comes in and helps to
and so
guide.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I think that's probably the first adaptation application, if you will, of AI in terms of these conversations in that way. So does Pickering ascribe to a standards-based sort of grading and learning philosophy, if you will?
Yeah, so we're standards referenced for sure, because you're looking at, has a student met the standard, but we also look at the growth referencing. And this is where this platform can also do that, right? Because it can say, well, where were you? What have you learned? And what comes next? Because if you think, okay, so say I'm in grade 8 music, right? And I'm sitting in this music class with all the other people, but I've already done 5 years of piano lessons externally to the school. So I'm sitting in the class and you're doing, basic, music theory, and you're looking at, tempo and rhythm and time signature and whatever, but I already know all of that. Well, right now in today's classes, I'll sit through it and I'll ace it, but did I really grow? Not really, because I already came in with all this knowledge. But with this new system, yes, there's the standards reference. You have to show that you've got it. But now I've got all this room to grow, and the growth referencing becomes more important in that situation, because I can already show at the beginning of that class, I've got most of those standards already met. But now I'm going to use the time in the class with that teacher to say, how am I going to extend that learning in a meaningful way or apply it in a meaningful context? So it's standards, it's growth. You could do norm referencing as well, because you could also include your standard, your large scale assessments in there. You could do any kind of system. Most importantly, it's about personalized learning.
Right. And so then in that scenario, because I'm relatively music illiterate, so I would be the student still learning all the tempo and rhythm, if you will, Cindy. But let's take that student who is, quote, exceeding or already mastered sort of the grade level expectations. Who's determining then what those new standards look like, or what it looks like, like you said, from a growth perspective? Because is the teacher then coming up with, in concert with that student, sort of what are the expectations? Is it the system? Is it the landscape of learning system that's pre-populating? Okay, you've already met, mastery of these, let's say, grade level standards, and now we're going to have you work on these. What does that look like?
Yeah, well, that's where the dance becomes interesting, doesn't it? Right. So now I come into that class, I have to demonstrate that I've met those expectations, and the teacher has to authenticate it, because the standards are still there and I have to meet all the standards, because I have to do that. And I also need a grade in this class, right? So I have to show that I've met the expectations of that course. And, with this platform, any school can put in their curriculum and say, here are standards. Okay, make sure we've met them. And this is, grade 8 music, this is what you need. But now the teacher can look at that with this child, right? And the child can come in and say, yeah, okay, everything's transparent to the child, the parent, the teacher. And the child can say, okay, look, I've met these expectations. I haven't met these ones, but this is where I'm really excited. And this is what I might want to do. And the child can pick their own minors and majors within the class, right? And then the teacher can work with them and guide them and direct them or create learning experiences with them. Or the child may say, you know what, I really want to go down this rabbit hole of learning and really get a sense of, how can I take the same song and apply it with scales to interpret or layer the music in different ways to add complexity to it? So maybe then, they're taking 1 or 2 standards that relate to that, but they're picking what they're extending. And then the teacher can work with them and say, yeah, that's a good idea. Go for that. That extends the learning. Or the student might say, I have no idea, but I really like music. So do you have any ideas? And then maybe that's where they're interacting with the AI platform and saying, what are some ideas for, what you might want to extend? So it can be a dialogue. It can be an evolving story. But either way, they all know, what have you met? What have you not met? Right. And it's, that meeting the expectations and an algorithm for determining, what your grade is can sit in the system, but then extending those is where the grades go, above and beyond. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, that's very fascinating. I'd be curious to know, I think I've asked this question of everybody, but in general, in terms of AI, what has been the teacher response, the staff response to AI, to some of these things that you've described? Open arms, closed arms, people? Has it varied based on age of teacher? In general, would be curious to know sort of how the staff response has been, let's say over the last year or two.
Yeah, well, there's the staff response on the day-to-day, and then there's a staff response on the system, right? So within the system, we're just building it now. I wanted to point out this is a book that I wrote about future of education. This piece on the tech is in there as well. So we can talk about that more in a minute. But the day-to-day, I think teachers are feeling like bombarded with new tools and all sorts of things, and thinking, what are the ethics of using this? What are the privacy pieces with it? How do I know that the student's work is their own? That sort of thing. And they're struggling with that. And some teachers find that a struggle and they're, reticent. Other teachers are finding it really fascinating what they can do. And they're changing and adapting what they expect of students because of that tech and how they can show their learning in multitudes of ways through the use of it. And we've got, a couple of people on staff, which I'm sure everybody has a school, that are really early adopters, and they can help other teachers to do that. So, the response is varied. But with the platform, we're putting that in we're doing a beta test of it right now. And then we'll put that in for the following year through our whole middle school to test it and to really get out any kinks in the system. And then we'll extend beyond that. But that's the piece where it really changes your whole learning management system. And that is, it'll be, a mass adoption of it will be the game changer, really, right, for how we work with kids individually and how we track their learning.
Right.
Yeah.
No, for sure. You mentioned the book. Would love to give you the opportunity to share anything that you would like to share about the book, its connection, obviously, to the work at Pickering in general, its implications for future learning, and then I'll give you one or two more questions to close up here soon.
Yeah, sure. So the book is called Connections, Academics, and Purpose, Designing the Future of School. And you can get more information about it at my website, www.cindelock.com. And I'm sure you'll attach that in some way to the thing. The focus of the book is really, a new philosophy of education and a methodology for how to put it in practice. And it really centers on, instead of starting with the curriculum, start with the connection. And then got a meaningful connection, embed the curriculum into that connection to help students find a sense of purpose. And that's really, the fundamental piece. But doing that in a way that we can then track learning individually and, doing it so that we don't lose that high academic in the process of applying learning in meaningful ways. That's the piece about the tech. So there's a couple of chapters there describing that landscape of learning and showing people what that would look like in practice, even though the book is really focused on how to really help make learning more real in schools and not being separated from the real world, but integrated with it. So that's kind of what the book is focused on. There are tons of examples in there. Right. From AK all the way to grade 12, what that would look like and could look like. And a lot of examples are from my current school, a lot from my previous school. Some are from other things I've seen people do in other environments and, just trying to amplify their voices. It's a really exciting time for education.
Yeah, sure. It's changing. Yeah, I think it's extremely exciting. I think, unfortunately, there are some people who see that excitement, like you said, as overwhelming, maybe for the teacher or even for the school leader. And so I think some people's natural response is to head in the sand or run as far away from this as possible. I think you all, it sounds like, are doing what I would advocate for, which is sort of lean into it as much as possible. But also, I use this phrase a lot, sort of go slow to go fast, right? Take your time, figure out what those systems look like, and then move forward from there. Last two things, would love to hear any advice you have for up and coming school leaders, even current school leaders, maybe who have been at the position for a while. And then any last word that you'd like to leave us with. Yeah,
so I think, we're an independent school. I guess in the States you would call us private, right? In that way that they're
independent as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So, parents pick us and they pay a lot of money to go to a school like this, right? And I think that we're really privileged to be able to offer this kind of education, but I think we're also obliged to show what school can be and to work towards these changes in a meaningful, thoughtful way that we can then show other people, like in the public system, how it can be scaled up. Because the public system is this massive machine that's mired by unions and resource limitations and large class sizes and all sorts of things that, it's very hard to reimagine it and do it on the fly, whereas for us, we can. So I would say to other school leaders, like, don't rest on your laurels of your this fantastic school that's been around for 180 years and, we'll just keep doing traditional education. I think if you put your head in the sand, the crowd will walk by you and trample all over you because we cannot keep doing what we're doing and somehow think that the school of yesteryear is going to be viable, the school of tomorrow. I don't think it makes sense in terms of what needs to take place. And also we're sitting on this opportunity to do it well. Our schooling system was structured for the industrial era, mainstream mass education, just getting kids through this conveyor belt. It doesn't need to be like that anymore. It can be so much more. And our kids should not be leaving feeling anxious and disengaged. And they shouldn't feel like learning is, something to be afraid of because they've learned that it's all this high stakes testing environments that they have to just kind of get through from a young age. Doesn't need to be that. It can be so much more. And we should be inspiring kids because we want them to be leading in the future. And if they learn that school is a negative thing, that's a narrow focus, negative experience, even for the ones that are the high flyers, because, it's just test. We haven't done our society, any positive through that. So now is the time. Yeah. So I guess I'd say, let's join a revolution. Let's join together and do this well together and show how it can be scaled up in a meaningful way. I hope so.
And then any last words that you want to leave us with before I thank you for your time?
Just if you do want to join the conversation, if we're talking to all of your watchers, your viewers, reach out to me. If you go to my website, cindelock.com, CINDE. OCK, let's start this dialogue together and let's get as many people involved as possible. I think I think that this is, it's a reason to get up in the morning. It's giving me purpose. And it's really exciting when you hear kids, begging, why can't I come to school on Saturday? I've got to get this done. This is so important. It's a game changer.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Again, Dr. Cinde Locke, head of school at Pickering College, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure, and we will catch up soon. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Peter. Lovely to talk to you.